Gilbert Arenas has made some xenophobic comments in the last 24 hours. I'm just going to read out what he had to say. This was pertaining to the South Sudan game in which the U.S. barely won by only a point on a game-winning layup by LeBron James. But here it goes. I'm going to read some of these quotes. Joel Embiid throwing the game for his cousins. And shit, they don't even have shoes. They get their shoes from America. We gotta ship them shoes. They shooting on fucking peach baskets and dirt with no shoes. Gonna read what else he said. We got the males. Almost lost to some Africans. Almost lost to the Ahi Ahi tribe. This is crazy. So that's what he said. Here's what I feel about Gilbert Arenas. I have always viewed Gilbert Arenas as a clown since the time he was a player in the league. This guy has a clownish personality. He's not someone you can take seriously. He's like a cartoon. He's always going to say stupid things, off the wall things, because he knows that's going to get attention. It's going to get him clicks. It's going to get him views. He's just there to be a fool. He's like that court gesture that's there to garner all the attention, but you don't take him seriously. If you have more than 2 or 3 brain cells, you don't take this guy seriously. Was what he said very ignorant? Yeah, absolutely. The way he disrespected South Sudan with all these stereotypes that people have about Africans from any of these African countries. They go through all these stereotypes, which is offensive. I went to a college. I'm not going to tell you where I went because I like to be private about that, but I went to a college which was very diverse. We had a lot of kids from outside the United States that went to this college. They had a good international student population, and it's interesting by being around just all these other kids. I learned about all these other cultures from all around the world, and especially when I encountered these kids from Africa, like the biggest thing that they would take offense to is when people would ask them on campus, like, did they live in a hut? Did they go hunting with spears and shit? It was very offensive, and I get why, because a lot of them would tell me, like, hey, I actually grew up in a house, or I came from this. It's not as bad as you think it was, or I had shoes, or I had clothes. Just they felt insulted, and I didn't blame them for feeling like that, even at a young age. It is annoying when people have a preconceived notion of you of being something that is inferior when you're not inferior, or you don't believe you are. So I definitely get this, but I also believe Gilbert is just a stupid idiot. He's a dumb guy. I'm not sure if he's truly an xenophobe. Maybe he is. Then we could say he is. And if people want to argue it, I won't argue against it. But I feel even in this hatred, it's where it's coming from. It's insecurity. I made another video. You can check that out if you didn't watch it, just about whether people enjoy blowouts from Team USA or close games. And I detailed in that video how it's just in our psyche as Americans that we want domination. We want to dominate because from a young age, we're always told that America's number one. America is the best. And every other place in the world is inferior to America. That's something that's ingrained at a very young age. That's something my parents would tell me growing up, just to feel good that, hey, you live in the best country in the world, that this is the best place ever, blah, blah, blah. And I have to admit, I believed that for most of my life up until I got to college. I definitely believed all that stuff because I wanted to believe it. You want to believe that you're part of the best in anything in life. It goes to your head. So I believed in all that stuff. I believed any country outside of America was inferior. And then my mind changed in college when I dealt with kids from different countries, especially this one summer where I was hanging out with all these international students, because a lot of international students came to my university during the summertime to take summer school. I would take summer courses also. And I learned a lot. And the shocking thing to me about it was how some of these countries' social infrastructures were better than the United States. Like some of these countries would have universal health care. And I didn't know the value of healthcare until these kids would tell me. Some of these countries would give you 2 to 3 months off. In America, you don't get any of that shit. And just they had all these better social programs to these other countries. And if the countries didn't have better social programs, their culture was better when it came to family structure and all the other stuff. And it was through all these interactions I realized that America, we're not the best. We may be the best at certain things, but we are certainly not the best overall. So my mentality completely changed, in that regard. But that's due to all that exposure I got. I would still be an xenophobic person like Gilbert if I didn't have all those interactions in college, which shaped my worldview of things. And I think Gilbert is one of those typical dumb, closed-minded individuals in that regard. He probably has that view, that xenophobic view. But I also think that view comes from a place of fear, a place of insecurity, where he's probably fearing, inside that over time, like you're going to see more of these African guys from Africa come into the league and challenge the current group of guys in the league for spots against NBA. And he could feel that his own community is threatened. The Black American community is threatened by these Africans coming in, competing for their spots. And that's where this hatred and xenophobia comes from. I really do believe a lot of that comes from that. I remember even back during the early 2000s when you had an influx of these Euros coming in, there was a lot of disdain for them, especially as a Spurs fan. I remember the hatred Ginobili would get from a lot of these American-born players for his style of play. They didn't like him. They played him dirty. Keep in mind, this is when the league was really physical. The league was physical up until like 2006, 2007. So I saw plenty of games where guys were giving him flagrant fouls, throwing him to the ground. You even heard crazy stuff where I remember Kenny Smith was xenophobic back then, and he felt Ginobili and these other guys threatened to take spots of current homegrown players. And I remember Barkley scolding him way back in the day in that regard, and just former NBA player Eddie Johnson saying the same thing. So I think now I think yours are now more accepted as the norm being in the NBA, but I don't think Africans are fully embraced, even though you've had Giannis having success winning a championship and Joel Embiid winning the MVP a few years ago. They're still making inroads, but I think over time it's going to be normalized that people will just be accepting of them and just won't think much of them, because it's over time you're just going to get used to seeing all these guys. So I think that will change, but it'll take some time. And I just think this is a reflection of just American society, that we feel threatened by all these immigrants. I'm not going to discuss whether I'm open border or closed border. I don't want to get into that, but you see this hostility and this anger where, Americans feel threatened that their jobs are being taken by these immigrants who are not worthy of it and whatnot. And I think Gilbert just reflected that American mentality when he made these jokes. I truly believe that. But I just want to say he's an idiot overall. He's a dumb guy. He's a clown. He's not to be taken seriously. I've never been a fan of his podcast, No Chill Gil. I think that's what it is. I don't like him. I just think he's cartoony. Just not a guy that should be taken serious, but I felt I had to talk about it since everyone's talking about it right now. So I think this will blow over. People will forget about it the next day or two. He's already apologized. He's done the typical apology. And I feel we'll all move on from this. But I think for anyone who doesn't know now, I think everyone knows now that this guy is a clown. That's pretty much all I'm going to say.